Hey guys, welcome back to Cello Lessons for Adults. So today we are going to learn how to put the bow on the string and do things with it, all right? Woo! So if you haven't checked out my other videos, I explained how to set up the left hand posture, and most importantly for this video, holding the bow. This is a crucial one, deserves its own week of practice, honestly. So if you haven't checked that one out yet, or you would like a refresher on it, hint, hint, wink, wink, I would recommend that you do that because that's going to be profoundly important to how the level of success for today's lesson goes. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to set up my hand just like I did before. So a quick refresher, I'm going to hold the stick of the bow, not touching the hair, in my left hand, and with my right hand I'm going to take my thumb and with the tip of my thumb find the space between the stick and the frog, keeping my thumb very curved like so. Now I'm going to melt my fingers over the bow grip. Melting point is from the second knuckle on my fingers here. I'm going to find with my pinky the little dot on the frog. My ring finger and middle finger fall naturally, and my pointer finger forms kind of a candy cane-like shape, wraps around the stick of the bow. And now I'm going to pronate or tilt in ever so slightly as if I'm turning a doorknob to my left to build up some pressure between the pointer finger and the stick, and why we do that will become apparent today. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, now that I've got this shape set up and I feel like I'm vaguely comfortable with holding the bow at this point, I'm going to put the bow on my D string about the halfway point of the bow here, okay? Yeah, there we go, good. So, now still holding the bow with my left hand, I'm now out at the tip of the bow. Sorry, my camera frame's a little narrow, but you can see I'm going to slide my right hand, my bow hand, along the stick of the bow, keeping my grip, okay? So keeping all the fingers curved in the same shape that they usually are. I'm just going to trace the stick with my fingers, okay? So you're not grabbing, obviously, it's just a super light pressure, but you are touching the bow still with all of the fingers. So I'm going to go all the way up to where the strings and the bow meet and come back down, just a few times, just gliding. Now, what am I paying attention to here? One, that my form in my hand is staying intact, but also what my elbow and my shoulder and my wrist have to do in order to trace this straight line. That's what I'm thinking about right now. Okay, so once you've done that a couple of times, let's come back to the bow here. And now what I'm gonna do is, getting my grip ready again, I'm gonna settle the hair into the string a little bit, and now I'm just gonna push and stop, okay? So what I was hoping to do just now is create that same straight line that I just practiced, okay? So let's try it the other way, only up to the halfway point on the bow, vaguely, so. And then back. And then we're gonna go back and forth a couple of times, again, checking in with all of these things. Bow grip, motion of arm, is my bow straight, okay? All right, cool. So a couple of things here. If your bow starts to slide around a little bit, that's all good. We might just want to bend the elbow a little bit more, okay? I should have already mentioned by now, which I didn't, sorry, is that my bow is being placed halfway between the bridge and the end of the fingerboard. So I'm not up here and I'm not down here, okay? I'm right in the middle, okay? You'll feel a little tension underneath the string as you do this. So now with your pronating candy cane shaped pointer finger applying pressure, if you twist just a little bit more in, just a little bit, like 5%, you might be able to get a bigger sound. If I lighten up on that pressure, my sound gets a little thinner, right? So now you can play around a little bit with pronating and pressure. Don't worry too much about that right now. This is only if you're feeling like a rock star at this point and you've gotten the bow grip and the form and the elbow and the straight line of the bow like just mastered instantly. If you haven't, which would be all of you, I'm sure, keep practicing that, okay? So what these are called are long tones, okay? Long tones are just playing long, long, long notes on either open strings or fingered strings. And these are instrumental, just like the scales, in practicing daily to develop a skill, which is sound production, okay? The reason that everyone loves the cello so much is it creates a beautiful sound. So we're gonna work a lot on how to do that. And the long tones are fundamentally going to take care of 85% of the work for us. So, can't recommend them highly enough. Let's try again. So I'm putting my bow on the D string, back and forth. As you want, okay? So let's try it on the other strings. So I'm going to go to my G. I'm going to make my arm 2% heavier because the G string is a little fatter and it requires just a little more pressure to get going, okay? So 2% heavier arm. All right, good, good. So once you do D and G, try it on the A string. Fair warning, A string is the hardest one to coordinate on. So you want to make sure that your bow grip is really good and that you're pronating quite heavily for this one, okay? So that the angle of your hand stays good. What tends to happen here is that beginning students will get over to the A string and in an attempt to reach it, their fingers will do this essentially. So we actually want to be thinking more of an angle, not to apply pressure, but to keep our hand position correct. Okay, so with that nice pronating, look, also my elbow has popped up a lot higher than say like the G, okay? So I've got my elbow over the A string. We're just gonna go out to the halfway point on the bow. If this one's challenging for you, trace the bow again on the A, just like you did on the E, on the D, the E. This isn't violin. Okay, so back and forth on the A string, okay? And you'll learn really quickly just how big of a reach. Look at how open my elbow is, comparatively speaking. I know it doesn't look too dramatic on camera, but it feels odd. So you're gonna be reaching like, it'll feel like a huge reach out, you know? But my elbow's high to get that A string bow straight. If the elbow's down low, this is what happens. Oh, and my hand went out too, like not good. Even if my hand is here, like what? I don't even know what you can do with your hand there. So this is not good. We don't want to be here. We don't want to be here. We want to be nice and straight. So practice that in any way you need to before trying the A string. And that should give you enough to practice right now. A couple of things to think about. If you're finding that you're creating some sounds you don't like, let's troubleshoot those now, okay? So let's say one of your sounds is this. Right? Ugh, gross. We get that a lot, okay? Again, don't be offended if you're doing that. It's totally natural. What that means is that you're applying probably a nice amount of pressure onto the bow. You need to move it a little faster. So like just bump up the speed of the bow like 2 miles an hour and see if that fixes it. If it doesn't, maybe even a little bit faster. Okay? Don't be afraid to move on the bow. Another thing I should mention is that starting your bow is not like starting a car. You do not have to accelerate into a speed. You should just go, okay? My speed should match the entire time. It doesn't, yeah, because that will happen, right? Obviously. Another thing, if your sound sounds like this, right? Apply more pressure. Keep the speed the same and apply a little bit more pressure. You have to press into the string a little bit to get it to actually start to ring. Okay, what's another one? If this happens. You can see visually why that's happening, right? My bow is skidding along the string. You'll hear that really, really obviously, and especially if it's skidding towards the bridge, because we get a pretty nasty sound if it's right next to the bridge. But the same thing goes if it creeps up too. Right? Yeah, same thing happens. Last troubleshooting point, if you're making this sound, right? Like you're a bagpipe player all of a sudden. You're hitting 2 strings at once, obviously. So the way to fix that is to just watch your bow so that you can aim it and make sure that you're not hitting the other 2 strings. This will happen more often than not. It can happen on any string, but more often than not, commonly it happens between the D and the G. So if any of those things are happening to you, don't despair. Just analyze them and take my pointers and see if those help. All right? Thanks so much for tuning in. See you next time. Bye-bye.